Hey gang, this week's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Hey, buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app now, create an account, and use code GOODSEATS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code GOODSEATS for $20 off. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Download Game Time today. And now, here's our show.
Kendrick ready. Here's the 1-0. Popped up, out of play, foul ball, 1-1. 2 out in the bottom of the ninth. Pete Kendrick trying to mow him down one more time. Kendrick, who went 9 innings in one game 1, is on the verge of doing it in game 5. Nichols is the batter. 2 out in the bottom of the ninth. Their fans are asking them to stand up. Kendrick line. Here's the 1-1. Right field. Bobby Gould. Bobby Gould. Stars win. Stars win. Stars win. The league championship belongs to Huntsville. They're mobbing Kendrick on the infield. The Stars have won it 5-3. The fans are turning and looking at me and staring at me like I'm crazy. The Stars have won the Southern League Championship. Oh, my Stars! Bobby Gould caught it and we won it. 5-3, the final. Oh! Bobby Gould made it. He caught it. What a rally. I don't believe it. I didn't believe it last night, and I don't believe it tonight. These two teams have played as good a baseball as you can ask for. And the Stars have won it. Go to Delivery Stable. You know what the deal is. Art, I got to take a break. I'll be back in a few minutes. Take a break. Tony Schiavone, thank you, partner. I just got some congratulations from Tony. The O's play, but oh man, what a game. 5-3, the Stars win. No, I'll do it like I'm supposed to. We'll take the Delivery Stable break. We'll be back in a moment on the Stars Radio Network.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
My goodness, can you feel the excitement? Hi there, everybody. It's Tim Hanlon. It's Good Seats Still Available, the curious little podcast that is devoted to what used to be in professional sports. Thank you for finding us. Huntsville Stars. You remember that team, minor league baseball? Huntsville, Alabama. Yes, we're going to Double-A, the Southern League, 1985 in particular, with our guest this week, Dale Tafoya. It's called One Season in Rocket City. How the 1985 Huntsville Stars brought minor league baseball fever to Alabama. And boy, oh boy, there you go. There's the call. On the call. Yes, it's Rick Davis. He can't control himself. It's the Huntsville Stars defeating the Charlotte O's to win the 1985 Double-A Southern League Championship. Live and exclusive on WFIX, 1450 AM in Huntsville. That's in September of 1985. What a story this team was. Not only winning the championship, we're talking about names that were future major leaguers on this team. José Canseco, for one. Terry Steinbach. Luis Polonia. I mean, just on and on and on. And what an assemblage of talent. And what a story this is. But before we get into the setup for this story, you got to hear what happened after Rick calls that sort of final. He's going into a commercial break, if you can believe it. And how you win a championship and segue into a spoken word promo is beyond me. But here's how it sounded right after the clip just ended. Before here's Rick Davis.
I hope there's a celebration going on at Delivery Stable Pizza, because my golly, there sure deserves to be one. The Stars with a run in the 8th to tie it, and Rocky Coyle with a look at Rocky. Brian Dorsett just picks him up and bear hugs him. It's all over in Charlotte, and the Stars have won it 5-3. It's all over. Delivery Stable Pizza is going to give you 10% off, I think, maybe more. I don't know. But anyway, that's a great place to celebrate. Man, do we need some celebrating. These last 2 days have been brutal on us. Huntsville 5, Charlotte 3. 5 runs every night. 5% off every night, and 5 runs tonight at 10% off. Enjoy it, folks. You know where it is. Delivery Stable Pizza. They've been great to us all year. Why don't you be great to them tonight? It's our final game of the year. We won it, and that's the only one that matters. Delivery Stable Pizza, Hamilton Square Shopping Center.
Now that is a pro. Rick Davis with the call. In the moment, winning the Southern League Championship of 1985, and he still has the presence of mind to sell like the devil for Delivery Stable Pizza. Was it 5% off? Was it 10% off? Gee, I hope it was more. But the good folks at Delivery Stable Pizza, I don't even know if they're around anymore, but Rick Davis did his best in the moment and celebrating. I'm sure there was lots of pizza to be had that September 1985 evening. Our guest this week, again, Dale Tafoya, the great book about this first ever season of this team. The team doesn't exist anymore. Well, it actually kind of does. Huntsville Stars showed up in 1985, and the whole lead up to how they got even there to Huntsville in the first place, it takes up the whole bunch of our conversation with Dale to start with. Let's put it this way. It was a pretty hectic start, and it involves Nashville. It involves Evansville, Indiana. And it ultimately winds up in Huntsville with a brand new, ultimately, multi-purpose stadium called Joe Davis Stadium. I think it may still be around. I don't know if it's been abandoned or still in use or whatever. But now the team actually still exists. They moved at the end of 2014 season to become, they were now domiciled in Biloxi, Mississippi. They are the Biloxi Shuckers. But this is a fun story because not only is it the arrival of minor league baseball in Huntsville, a city that actually had quite a bit of history with the game of baseball, but had been bereft of baseball for quite some time. And the re-arrival of baseball in 1985 was quite the thing. And as at the time, the minor league affiliate of the Oakland A's, don't get me started on that story. It's a whole other conversation for another day. But the arrival and the first ever season and winning, capping it all off, as you just heard, with the dulcet tones and the excitable voice of Rick Davis, winning the Southern League Championship. So a heck of a year for sure. And that's what we talk about this week with our guest, Dale Tafoya. Again, the book is called One Season in Rocket City. And as we slowly segue into the conversation, we highly suggest you get a copy of this book. It came out a few weeks back in April, and it is published by our pals at the University of Nebraska Press. It's a fun read. And again, you're going to get into a whole bunch of Tim Belcher is part of the story. José Canseco, as we said, Luis Polonia, Terry Steinbach, Stan Javier, Brian Dorsett. I mean, there's all kinds of names, if you're a baseball fan, that you might remember from their major league days. And essentially the Huntsville team was a stock and chock full of Oakland's top prospects back then. And sure enough, they won the championship. Get the book right now, why don't you? It's available wherever you can get fine books. And of course, if you go to our website at goodseatsstillavailable.com to search up this episode, which is numbered, what is it now? 303. My goodness. With Dale Tafoya, you'll find on the website there a convenient link or two or three to the book, and you'll be whisked away to Amazon. And when you buy the book, and any book or other form of media from our website, we'll get a couple of nickels and dimes of referral love. We appreciate that. That's one of the small ways that we generate enough coinage, shall we say, to keep the lights on and the heat going, or the air conditioning as we get into the summer around here. So it's the least you can do, friends. So we appreciate you doing that. And sadly, if you're going out of your way to do it, well, we appreciate you doing it nonetheless, and hopefully it's for the proverbial good cause. Again, the book, One Season in Rocket City. Get the book, and hopefully this conversation with Dale will entice you to do so. So why don't we waste no more time and get right to it, shall we? Here's our conversation we had a few weeks back. Please, as always, enjoy. From my research, it looks like you've got 2 books coming out in the next 2 months.
Yeah. The paperback for Billy Ball, that's Billy Ball and the Resurrection of the Oakland A's. The hardcover came out in 2020, and the paperback came out in March. So that the paperback has just come out, and now I have One Season in Rocket City, and that's coming out officially. The publication date is April 1st.
Got it. But they both have an Oakland A's attachment to them. Is that a source of, am I digging into some ideas to maybe how both of these stories and books came about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in the East Bay here. Oakland is about 20 minutes from where I live. So I followed a lot of A's games and followed the A's. So the Billy Martin book is a story about the A's, kind of a resurrection of a franchise back in 1980 until like 92. There was a renaissance, and that kind of book is about really leadership and what Billy Martin brought to the A's. And yeah, this is a book that has a little bit of an A's bent, but it's based in Huntsville, Alabama. So I think it covers more just Huntsville, Alabama, and more minor league baseball with some A's context, because I have accrued a lot of A's contacts in the organization over the years. So that's kind of where that bent came from.
Well, the reason why I'm bringing it up, of course, is that as we get into this conversation and the story of this team, the Huntsville Stars, no longer with us, it qualifies completely for this little show. The very first season and their debut in 1985, what major league team were they affiliated with? Said A's.
The Oakland A's, yeah, the first year of existence. So, and as we get into the discussion, the impetus of the story begins in Nashville, Tennessee, in the heart of a baseball savant named Larry Schmittou, as I'm sure you did your research on.
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. So the A's are literally just one team that this Huntsville Stars story is related to, because in many respects, this is preceded, if you will, by the first version of the Nashville Sounds. Maybe you can sort of set the tone for us here, and also maybe give us the year that we're kind of sort of circling around, this sort of pre-story of the original Nashville Sounds, because it's integral to the story.
Yeah, like I said, the impetus of the 1985 Huntsville Stars came in the heart of Larry Schmittou. Larry Schmittou was this baseball prodigy that championed baseball at every level in Nashville. He was a baseball player coming up. He lived and breathed baseball, and he's still considered Mr. Baseball in Nashville, Tennessee. He started coaching baseball in his teens, and he was the top tier coach of all the amateur teams in Nashville. He was the premier coach. All the players in Nashville wanted to play for him, and he resurrected Vanderbilt's located in Nashville. He resurrected Vanderbilt's neglected program in the late 60s and early 70s. But his ultimate vision was to bring a Major League Baseball franchise to Nashville, and that was his end game. And you still hear talks about a Major League Baseball expansion team coming to Nashville. So I think that's an interesting story to still follow. So he forms the Nashville Sounds in late 1977, and a part of his ownership group to start was country music legend Conway Twitty. And Conway Twitty brought in Richard Sturban of the Oak Ridge Boys as far as the ownership group. So Larry Schmittou had country music money backing him. So he starts the Nashville Baseball Club. It later becomes, 2 years later, the Nashville Sounds. The first 2 years, Schmittou is affiliated with the Cincinnati Reds. After the contract ends, Schmittou brings in the New York Yankees. And that's where the Yankees are affiliated with them for 5 years. And the Sounds were just an enormous success. And what Schmittou did, Tim, he combined the Music City theme of the entertainment theme of Music City with baseball. And like I said, it was a huge success. And he was a marketing genius and entrepreneurial genius. In 1980, the Sounds drew almost 600 fans. In 1982, in one game, they drew over 22,000 fans. So this guy knew how to market. And even in the early 80s, the Texas Rangers tapped Schmittou to be their marketing director. I mean, he just had the man had a golden touch. And the Sounds continued to lead the Southern League. That was the league that they played in. They continued to lead the Southern League in attendance. But as 1983, 1984 came around, the interest in the Sounds in Nashville was waning a little bit, and attendance was declining a little bit. And Schmittou, knowing the end game was to bring a major league franchise, he was able to purchase the Evansville triplets of the American Association in Evansville, Indiana. They were a dying franchise. That purchase was critical because he was able to bring that AAA club to Nashville and elevate Nashville from AA to AAA, which of course is a step classification right below the Major League Baseball. So before
you let's clear this up. So in essence, the Nashville Sounds kind of debut out of nowhere, become this phenomenon as a AA franchise. And as the attendance starts to wane in the early 1980s, he's got this idea of helping Nashville go to the next level by, if you will, reclaiming or finding another an actual AAA team in Evansville, Indiana, of all places, to bring and relocate into Nashville and ostensibly, I'm guessing, move this AA franchise further elsewhere.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes, and that was the scenario, bringing that AAA franchise, which was affiliated with the Detroit Tigers, bringing that AAA franchise to Nashville and elevating Nashville to AAA. This shell of a franchise, the Nashville Sounds, he still needed a home for that, and they were in the Southern League, and that's what put into motion Schmittou eventually delivering this AA franchise, this shell of a franchise, to Huntsville, Alabama in August of 1984. And Huntsville hadn't had a pro baseball team since 1955 when the Huntsville Springers folded.
All right. So let me ask you about Schmittou then. So is it essentially his idea to be the owner of both of these franchises, or is that verboten in minor league baseball at that time?
Well, he was the figurehead of the ownership group. He was, of course, backed by country music money, but he not only owned the Sounds and that Huntsville franchise, he was growing an empire of minor league clubs, and he was owning them. And at that time, as the book articulates, minor league baseball was changing, and owners, they weren't owning a baseball team just for a minor league team just for a tax write-off. They were buying franchise and flipping them and selling them for more. So yeah, he didn't just own those two teams. He was a minor league baseball mogul, if you will.
All right. So where do the Evansville triplets play into this? How is that the franchise that's found, if you will, to sort of be part of this swap/move? And how does he essentially get it and then sort of engineer that team relocating and renaming itself in Nashville in order to facilitate the move of the AA club?
Well, that Evansville franchise, Tim, was dying for a while. In fact, Schmittou wanted to purchase that franchise earlier, but they weren't ready to sell. Attendance was so bad in Evansville that the Detroit Tigers, the parent club, came to play there, and there are only a few thousand fans there. And usually, if a parent club comes to an affiliate, you're going to have a sellout crowd. There was little interest there, and that franchise was in the red. And here again, in the end game, Larry Schmittou wanted to elevate Nashville to AAA, and that was an opportunity. And that purchase was critical because it enabled him to bring that AAA franchise to Nashville, and Nashville would be AAA, classified as AAA, and in the American Association.
But I'm guessing it wasn't sort of smooth sailing, right? So, I mean, in order to get a team in the AAA, he owns a team in AA, and he's got basically 3 cities he's got to sort of, deal with. How does this all play out? And is there any even sort of order to this? Like, does one have to happen before the other? Like, for example, does he have to find a home for the AA franchise before he can effectively allow the move of an Evansville franchise into Nashville to take its place? Or let me guess, I'm guessing it's not a straight line and there's probably a little juggling, shall we say, of plates in the air while stuff sort of plays out. No?
Absolutely. It was just a flurry of franchise, cross-franchise movement. And I called it a game of musical chairs because you had the Southern League by Schmittou elevating Nashville to AAA. They would now be a part of the American Association. Now, this Nashville Sounds were the Southern League's most profitable and popular franchise. So Schmittou elevating Nashville to AAA frustrated the Southern League directors because they were losing the Nashville Sounds. So that you have that playing into it, and also Schmittou needed to pay Nashville a vacating fee as well. So yeah, you had certain there was certain confusion and a lot of movement during that time, but everything kind of happened at once around August of 1984 when that Nashville AA franchise was green lighted to go into Huntsville, and everything fell into place where that AAA franchise in Nashville was settled, and so was the AA franchise in Huntsville, and that AAA franchise. I know it can get confusing. It remained. They kept the name the Nashville Sounds for that AAA franchise as well.
So, was there an agreement that he signed or something that said that every city he's dealing with has to have end in the word "ville"?
I never thought of that, but
there you go. Maybe that's for your next book. But no. So all right. So we're already assuming that Huntsville is sort of a done deal. But where and how does Huntsville come into the mix? Like, why and how does that city come into play for him as the place to relocate this AA Nashville version team?
Yeah, well, now we come Joe W. Davis, the mayor of Huntsville, the 5-term mayor of Huntsville since 1968. He loved baseball, and there was Huntsville was craving for entertainment, and he wanted to bring a minor league club to fill that void. And you got to give him credit for even government officials to see a need of what a franchise, a sports franchise, can bring to a city. So Schmittou had talked with Joe Davis a couple of years before about bringing a single A club to Huntsville, but what always kept Huntsville from a team was the lack of a stadium. But this opportunity was perfect when Schmittou was looking for a home for his AA franchise. Davis wanted to strike the iron while it was hot, and so he allowed Schmittou to propose the AA franchise in front of the city council, and that movement started in July of 1984, and there were talks because. Also, with Nashville, once the Detroit Farm Club came to Nashville to form the AAA club, the Yankees were out of a home. So many felt that if Schmittou brings the AA franchise to Huntsville, the Yankees are going to come with him to Nashville. But that wasn't the case. The Yankees transferred their AA club to Albany, New York. So had that come to play. But you have to give Joe W. Davis credit, and the new stadium was named after him because he fought hard to get that team to Huntsville, and there were challenges, as I'm sure we're going to discuss.
Well, okay, so why was he What was, I mean, he's a baseball fan. Okay. I mean, if there's some civic benefit there, some personal pocket lining by perhaps being a minority owner of like what is the driving force of, is it just sheer, I'm the mayor and I want to elevate this city to, as we see on the major league side, to give it some sort of credibility by having some level of professional sports team.
Well, at the time, Huntsville desperately needed an outlet to bring the community together. It was recognized and celebrated as a space town after Wernher von Braun arrived and designed the Saturn V rocket that shot man to the moon during the space race with the Soviet Union. Before that, it was a cotton and cattle town. But Huntsville, for entertainment, they had the Redstone Arsenal. They had a nice downtown area, and they had some small civic centers. But the city lacked a major attraction to bring the community together. Like one resident told me, it needed a venue for the community to explode in. And the Stars eventually fit the bill and filled that void. And I think that was the intent for Mayor Joe Davis to bring minor league baseball to enhance the community.
Was this stadium named after him immediately after its construction in 1984 or 85?
It was named after him. It was going to be named after him right after the Huntsville City Council approved the contract and the proposal to bring the farm club to Huntsville. So yeah, absolutely. In fact, Joe Davis on the home opener in 1985 to open the new stadium threw out the first pitch. So he deserved it. He worked hard for it.
So give me a sense then. So this franchise gets relocated. The sounds of the AAA now are firmly ensconced in its own different story. So give our audience a bit of a sense of sort of how the preparation and the arrival of this franchise comes about in 1984-85.
Well, as Schmittou gives the first proposal to the city council to bring the AA franchise, his AA franchise to Huntsville, there was one demand that he had in the proposal that the Huntsville officials, the city council, was very concerned about. Schmittou insisted on beer sales in the new stadium, and Huntsville was going to finance the new stadium, and they ended up building the stadium in a little over 33 weeks. But the Huntsville City Council shot down selling alcohol in the new stadium, and the deal almost never happened. I mean, approving alcohol sales in the heart of the Bible Belt back then was one of the hardest things you could do. Back then, if someone wanted to purchase some wine in a grocery store there, they had to go into a curtained back room, and it was privately put in the bag, and the customer had to hold it in the bag till he left the store. That was kind of the climate as far as alcohol sales. And also, about 2 weeks later, in August 12th, there was a huge brawl, and you can look this up on YouTube, the listeners. There's a huge brawl in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium between the Braves and the Padres, and there were drunk fans. They were firing beer on the players, and I think 17 players were ejected. 5 fans were arrested, and this was during the negotiations to approve beer sales in the new stadium. So at one point, everyone figured it wasn't going to happen, but Mayor Davis was able to muster some support from key council members, and they came up with a compromise, Tim. And that compromise was a designated section in the new stadium for non-drinkers, and everyone agreed. Schmittou agreed, Mayor Davis agreed, and the city council agreed, and that's what made this transaction happen, where that Schmittou's AA franchise came to Huntsville, and that's where the Huntsville Stars were born.
So that was the compromise, is to have a minority seating section for people who chose not to drink?
Yes, absolutely. That was the compromise, and that did the trick, and everyone was pleased after that. And the stadium was approved, and Huntsville financed the stadium. And the first night, April 19th, 1985, over 10,000 fans crammed that stadium.
But why the importance of the beer thing? Because of its lucrativeness in terms of generating revenues at the ballpark during game days? Was Davis perhaps in the pocket, so to speak, of the liquor / beer company or companies in the process? In your research, was there any sort of stuff behind the scenes that was maybe further driving that?
Great question, Tim. I think that the consensus among Southern League owners was that a minor league club cannot be successful without revenue from beer. And I think that was, and Larry Schmittou was able to sell beer at Herschel Greer Stadium in Nashville, where the Sounds played, and I'm sure he saw what those figures brought in. So he was adamant. He wanted to sell beer for that revenue, and he insisted if Huntsville was not going to allow him to sell beer in that new stadium, he was not going to bring that franchise there.
All right, so let's bring back the A's to this conversation, because as Huntsville gets its sea legs in its first season in 1985, they are officially affiliated with the A's come 1985. How is that sort of coming about? Because they were not part of the Nashville situation before they moved, correct?
No. And Tim, everyone assumed, like, again, that the Yankees, the storied Yankees, were going to bring their Double-A club to Huntsville. And I think that was a selling point for the Huntsville City Council to approve the deal, thinking that the Yankees were going to be coming to town.
Well, okay, so where did that come? Where does that come from, right? So is this a competitive situation that Schmidt is beating them at the pass for, or is this just sort of, was he engaging in a bidding war to, where do the Yankees come into this and how?
Well, the story now goes to Albany, New York. And the Albany, New York, they had a new ballpark called Heritage Park. And the owner of the Albany Colony A's was a gentleman by the name of Ben Bernard. Now, the A's planted their Double-A affiliate there in Albany, New York in 1983. But since Schmittou elevated Nashville to Triple-A, the Yankees Double-A farmhands needed a place to play, and the Yankees needed a place to plant their Double-A franchise. So once Ben Bernard, the owner of the Albany Colony team, got word that the Yankees were available, and Billy Martin was a part of the Yankees leadership group behind the scenes, he pulled some strings to bring to draw that Yankee farm club to Albany, New York. So the Yankees' arrival in Albany, New York, pretty much left the A's Double-A affiliate homeless. So, and that's where an Oakland A's executive, Walt Jocketty, goes to Huntsville, meets with Huntsville officials, sees this excitement surrounding a new stadium there, meets with Don Mincher, who's the late Don Mincher, who was Mr. Baseball there, and he was the general manager of the Huntsville Stars in 1985. And that's where they formed this partnership, and he signed a 2-year working agreement to bring the A's Double-A affiliate to Huntsville. So here again, to avoid any confusion, the Yankees Double-A affiliate went from Nashville to Albany, New York, and that kicked the A's Double-A club out of Albany, New York. And the Albany Colony A's general manager was just a huge Yankee fan, so he couldn't wait to bring the Yankees there. Especially, they're going to be closer to Yankee Stadium. They're going to be in Albany, New York, the capital region. And so the A's Double-A club was homeless, and that's where they eventually partnered with the city of Huntsville and Larry Schmittou.
Crazy. I mean, good luck trying to keep it. You can't understand the game without a scorecard, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like I call it, chapter musical chairs. A lot of cross-franchise movement at the time, and I think it's interesting because Billy Martin had just been fired from managing the Oakland A's, and now he's basically a part of a plan that's bringing the Yankees and overtaking the A's Double-A farm club in Albany and leaving the A's needing a place to go. So I thought that was interesting too.
Well, how much of this is a genius by Schmittou, and how much of it is just dumb luck, right? Does he kind of know that there's sort of like this, I don't know, game of chairs, musical chairs going on in terms of, and perhaps some heat around this Huntsville team that seems to be that either was planned to be or is starting to show some real, fervor for the game?
Yeah, well, he respected the A's organization and their minor league system. Schmittou, he was a baseball guy. He knew baseball. He was a coach, and as an owner of a Double-A franchise, he always followed closely the Single-A players in the Single-A farm clubs. So he knew the A's Single-A farm club had a lot of premier stars and were winning. So that enticed him also to partner with the Oakland A's. He always followed closely and studied the minor league affiliates, the minor league teams at the below level. So, and that's where him and Walt Jocketty formed a bond. And they had met before during the winter meetings, but they never agreed to come together as an affiliate ownership with anything like that. But I think that the A's loaded farm system was very attractive to Schmittou, and he proved to be right, because that roster was just star-studded. That the 1985 Huntsville Stars had the who's who in minor league baseball.
Well, so you're intimating that the A's had a pretty heavy hand in shaping the composition and I guess also the running of the franchise, or where are the lines drawn between the parent club and Schmittou's new Double-A franchise?
Well, I think Schmittou and Don Mincher, the general manager, they're the hosts. So they're going to promote the club. They're going to entice the residents to come to the ballpark. But ultimately, as far as player personnel, that purview lies in the hands of the A's brass. And they control player movements, they control promotions, demotions, trades. But Schmittou and the city of Huntsville and Mincher, they were their latitude was just hosting the club. They had no say into which players they're going to get. They were just there to host the club and sponsor promotions during the season to draw fans to help with revenue.
All right, what's this? Game time? Fantastic. Hey, buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can snag the tickets without the stress with the Game Time app. And I will tell you, the Game Time app has gotten me out of a couple of jams on more than a few occasions. I'll tell you, a couple of weeks back, I travel fairly often for work. I was stuck in New York. I had dinner plans fall through during a business trip. I was leaving the next morning, but had some time on my hands. And what's a sports guy like me to do? Well, scouring around to see if there are any events going on. And sure enough, the Knicks were playing the Nets at home at the world's most famous arena. So about an hour before the game, I fired up the Game Time app and found a decently priced ticket. I won't tell you what the people around me paid for their ticket, but it certainly wasn't nearly as expensive as theirs. And I got to watch the Knicks in a rare moment of amazingness kick the snot out of the Nets. But that's Game Time is the place to get your last-minute tickets. They've got a tremendous set of deals, flash deals they call them, and last-minute tickets. They're easy to find and buy for just about every kind of event you want, sports, and entertainment, music, that kind of stuff. The images, the seat views are just perfect. They're great. That's always like the big conundrum when you're looking at a seating chart. You have no idea where you're going to be, what your view is going to be like. And Game Time's got probably the best imagery that I've seen of any of the ticket sites out there. And of course, they've got a lowest price guarantee, including event cancellation protection. So you know you're going to be covered in case. As a matter of fact, that the Game Time guarantee means that you'll always get the best price. And if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Don't believe me? Try it for yourself. Download the Game Time app now, create an account, and then on us, use the code GOODSEATS for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, that's the Game Time app, and it's also you can check them also out at gametime.co. But get the app, download the app now, create an account, and use the code GOODSEATS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply for sure. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's Game Time. Thank you, Game Time, for your sponsorship of this week's episode. And now, back to our conversation. How enthusiastic is the populace about this team, regardless of its A's connection or not? I mean, you're mentioning it. It's at this point, it's about almost 30 years, 25, maybe 30 years since baseball had been played professionally in Huntsville. I mean, maybe describe Huntsville a little bit. I mean, I think it may be lost on a generation or two about how important and what Huntsville's role in the space program was. But you'd think that after having such a large role in that program, that by at least the 1980s, they would have had some, I don't know, additional cultural expansion because of it, but no baseball until then. I mean, I guess I'm just curious as to why it maybe took so long and maybe what was sort of going on in Huntsville as a community besides, or maybe the halo of the space program was starting to wear off at that time. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the challenge again was always just to finance a suitable stadium for minor league baseball, and there were talks, but what talks dissolved, and you have a leader in Joe Davis who really wanted that club there. So and I think that the residents, what made this story special is the community there. They treated these young minor leaguers like royalty. They made them the Beatles of Huntsville, and so I really, you know, as Ray Thoma, he was a third baseman on the Stars. He told me it was as if this community in Huntsville was searching for their long lost son, and they got a whole team of them. I mean, they just embraced the Stars, and I don't think that it was the big names on the Huntsville club, the big prospects, because I think a lot of the Huntsville residents, they didn't know any of the players coming. They weren't following the A single A affiliate in the minor leagues. But the A's, the Huntsville Stars came out 14-5 out of the gate to open the season with a sparkling new stadium. And the city, I mean, this farm club just electrified the city. So I think there was a void there. And again, the community, the young kids in Huntsville needed a place to go after school, and the Stars fit the bill. And the fans, they would invite these players over for dinner. If a player had an itch to go fishing, a resident would take him to a fishing hole. If a player needed to cash their check, a fan would drive them to cash their check. You had something called host families, where prospects, these minor leaguers, would stay with families. And there was one resident that there in Huntsville that owned an entire or managed an entire apartment complex, and dozens of Stars players live there. So it was a special bond and romance between the community and this team.
Before we go a little bit further, tell me about the Southern League itself. How embracing of a brand new franchise were they? And you know, it's a double-A sort of circuit, but it's also one that seems to have been during this time pretty vibrant in terms of talent and play and competitiveness. I guess I'm curious as to what this Southern League was all about around that time.
And the Southern League, it's a double-A league, and with a double-A, I mean, the double-A is filled with prospects, And usually, once a player gets to Double A, then their trajectory, it's going high. And but it's constantly testing the makeup of players. Walt Jocketty, a baseball executive, told me if a player can do well in Double A, he probably could do well in the major leagues as well. So it was a very, very competitive league and more sophisticated than Single A. Southern League, the travel was very challenging, and there was humid, sweltering conditions that drained players. And you had these long bus rides from 4 hours to 10 hours going from city to city, and where the evening game ends at 10 o'clock, and the team is loading and headed for the next city at midnight. So they're traveling all night to the next city, and they're traveling all night on windy, dark roads. And the manager sometimes has to use the fungo bat to keep the driver awake.
So this is the proverbial bus league then, huh?
Absolutely. And you have to remember, back then in 1985, Tim, there was no iPhones or smartphones or iPads. You were lucky to have a cassette player. I mean, you were hip if you had a cassette player. So these these minor leaguers would have to muster up their own entertainment, and they would have fun by interviewing each other and pretending they were facilitating radio shows. So it was just those were the elements. And as I mentioned, the Southern League and Double A baseball, it constantly tested the makeup of these young kids.
It's also interesting, too. This is I think it was in 1976. And I don't know if this was unique to the Southern League, if they were in the vanguard for this, or they were just following some type of I don't know, fad or pattern, I guess, with other leagues. But they began a split season format, which I don't know how common, frankly, and this is my ignorance, that was in the minors. But it certainly makes for different dynamics as well. And it seems like it made, by most accounts, the Southern League pretty darn competitive, because you essentially had 2 seasons within one.
Yeah, and that was interesting information for me to learn about as I followed and wrote this story. There were actually 2 seasons. In this season, for example, the Huntsville Stars won the first half. Another Southern League club won the second half. So so just because the Huntsville Stars didn't win the second half, because they won the first half of that season, they automatically clinched a spot in the playoffs. And so that's kind of how it was just very interesting how it all played out. So by the first half of the season, the Huntsville Stars already clinched a playoff spot, and as we know, they end up beating the Charlotte O's in a very crucial, chilling 5-game series. They ended in Charlotte.
Well, let's talk about some of the players, because unbeknownst to many people, although they were probably all sort of tabbed with being future stars and of great talent, to be prepared for hopefully someday major league play. You look at it in retrospect all these years later, and the eyebrows are a bit arched when you look at some of the names that just happened to be in the original composition of the first ever team in 1985. And I guess the question is, well, 2 questions. Number 1, how about laying a few names on us? And then number 2, is this through sort of genius or dumb luck or some combination thereof that this not so obvious star-studded roster sort of comes to be at this time at the very beginning of their journey in Huntsville?
Yeah, I think it was the timing of the rise of Oakland's prospects, Tim. I think that after Billy Martin left the A's, and we had this whole Billy Ball phenomenon, Billy Ball style was kind of an instant gratification, win immediately. Whenever an organization brought Billy Martin on, he was going to try to win immediately. But when he left, the A's brass wanted to shift their attention to their farm system. So they really focused on investing in their farm system and the drafts. So early in the early 1980s, the A's just pulled off some great drafts and drafted some really premier talents. So I think that was kind of the focus. And And the 1985 Huntsville Stars were kind of a reward of their due diligence with drafts and the minor league systems for about 2 or 3 years. On the starting rotation for the Stars, you had a starting rotation of Tim Belcher, Eric Plunk, the late Darryl Ackerfelds, Greg Cadaret, and Joe Law. I mean, 4 of those starting pitchers pitched in the major leagues. And in total, 15 of the Stars who played on the Stars at some point in that 1985 season eventually reached the major leagues. In the outfield, from left to right, you had Luis Polonia, who had a long major league career, Stan Javier, long major league career, and of course, José Canseco. All 3 catchers played in the big leagues, Terry Steinbach, Charlie O'Brien, and Brian Dorsett. So they were just star-studded. But by July, the A's lost their top. This has to do with the politics of minor league baseball. They lost their top pitcher and hitter. Top pitcher Eric Plunk and hitter José Canseco to AAA Tacoma. They got drafted, so they still had to finish the season and win the championship after losing their 2 top players in July, and that was a challenge for them.
And how did the players sort of take to this? I mean, where were they? Where were the bulk of them before? Were they just sort of these are just natural moves from either single A or AAA, or even maybe being reassigned from Major League, or maybe even just a spring training rookies that didn't make the cut and need some seasoning from the big club down to I guess the question is, was this a normal assemblage of players that a typical AA team would be putting together in a normal sort of season? Or was there something, I don't know, more concentrated, more focused, more, I guess, more intentional, I guess, in putting this together, this team?
Well, I think the parent club, the Oakland A's, knew this core and crop of prospects were going to be their crop in the big league level a few years down the line. So I think they wanted to keep all these players in Huntsville in AA to play together. They played under manager Brad Fisher, and he was a rising managerial star as well in the A system. As the young prospects rose in the system, so did Brad Fisher. So I think it was a matter of these players coming up, and in the timing, a lot of them were slated to play in AA, and they came organically from single A. In 1984, you had the single A Modesto A's. The A's had 2 single A affiliates that they came from: the single A Modesto A's and the single A Madison Muskies in Madison, Wisconsin. So those players from both of those farm clubs populated the Huntsville Stars in 1985. Plus, you had trades. In December 1984, the A's traded superstar Ricky Henderson, and in that 7-player trade came Eric Plunk and Stan Javier. They were critical to Huntsville's success in 1985. And also, and I dedicate a whole chapter to this in the book, Tim, is the acquisition of Tim Belcher in a very controversial free agent compensation pick. They landed him in February of 1984 from the Yankees after losing free agent Tom Underwood. So you had a lot of the players got there organically, but also through trades and also the free agent compensation.
How about the fans? It sounds like almost literally from the get-go that there was a not only warm embrace, but a very enthusiastic one. And I'm guessing there are a couple of factors to that. Number one, maybe not immediately understandable, a pretty damn good competitive team. Number two, a brand new stadium. Number three, a brand new team altogether out of nothing the year before. I guess I'm curious as to where that enthusiasm comes from. Is it just because it's new and shiny and quote unquote big league? The fact that it's a pro team coming to town for the first time in a long time. But how do you? Because I can see obviously as the year went on, their play and their competitiveness certainly didn't hurt either. But in the beginning, it was pretty well received from the first days.
Absolutely. And I think it was just the freshness, Tim, the freshness of a new team, the freshness of just a dominant team, the freshness of a sparkling new, a state-of-the-art new stadium, Joe Davis Stadium, later dubbed the crown jewel of the Southern League. Again, like I said, the Stars got off to a 14-5 start. They had this phenom, José Canseco, who was hitting balls near Memorial Park Highway in left field. He was creating a buzz in the Southern League. You just have, and they all just flocked to the stadium. I think it was just a new toy. And again, I think you have to understand and realize this team filled a void. So again, the city of Huntsville, I think it needed a major attraction to unite the community. And I think it was just the timing of what this team brought, this partnership with Oakland, this partnership with Larry Schmittou, and this beautiful new stadium, state-of-the-art new stadium that opened on April 19th, 1985. So I think it was just many factors that just brought this excitement and electricity in the city.
Was the rest of the league enamored with it, jealous of it? I mean, I know it became kind of a show that kind of stood out from most of the other teams in the league. I mean, I'm just curious if they felt this was something. I got to think they felt it was kind of a shot in the arm, or perhaps they maybe just didn't appreciate the fact that Huntsville was getting all this attention literally out of nothing or out of nowhere.
Yeah, and I think there could have been some jealousy, but I think the Southern League, they benefited because not only they had a new affiliate, you had the Huntsville Stars, but Huntsville Stars drew over 300 fans that season, and they led the Southern League in
300 fans or 300,000? 300 fans. That would be
okay.
something.
Yeah, 300,000 fans. And Don Mincher, before the season, he hoped for a season attendance of 250,000, but over 300,000 filled Joe Davis Stadium that season. So I think it was a shot in the arm for the Southern League, and I think players, when they saw this dominant team and how many prospects this club had and this beautiful stadium, I think that other players in the Southern League in these different cities, they couldn't wait to come to Huntsville and play in the quote unquote show there. And they were pumped to pass through Huntsville and to play games there. So I think it brought some excitement to other teams in the league, and but I also think there could have been some jealousy or some managers to say, hey, a lot of these players could be playing in AAA or in the major leagues, but they're playing this AA level. So you could have had some of that as well, Tim.
How many original actors, shall we say, did you get to talk to in putting this together? How many players, coaches, management types, league officials? I mean, obviously, as the years roll on, it gets harder and people get older and either forget things or, move on from this mortal coil. How much original sourcing were you able to do in your investigation of that year?
Yeah, I think I interviewed more than half of the team. I interviewed pretty much all the executives in the A's and some Huntsville officials. The challenging part, Tim, to put this book together with there was just not much material at all covering this season. There was not a lot of photos depicting this season. So usually newspapers have they're on archives in newspaper.com or newspaperarchives.com, and you could just see kind of a pulse of a tone of what's going on. And a lot of the Huntsville newspapers that intimately cover this team, there wasn't not a lot of information online. So I had to fly to Huntsville and basically live in the library there for about a week. And I found the Alabama Department of Archives, where I was able to unearth some photos from that season. So I'm pretty excited. I think probably interviewed over 75 to 100 people involved in the story. Players, coaches, managers, Larry Schmittou himself was very generous with his time, and he's still doing some great things in Nashville, Tennessee there. So, but I'm pretty excited because there wasn't a lot of material available for this season. It's fresh material in the book, and I'm proud of how like my due diligence was able to put this team together, because you're getting a lot of fresh material that I worked hard for to obtain.
You got a couple of great quotes along the way peppered through this book. Any ones that sort of either come to mind or players that you talk to and their reminiscences of the team, the town, and that first season? I mean, I have to think it was somewhat special on some level, even for people like José Canseco, who only got to experience half of it because they won a championship, right? And that's a cool thing, regardless of where you are. It's still on the professional level. And I got to think that married with the fact of it being a new team and all the enthusiasm in the city, that must have had some special memories for some of those folks that you talked to.
There was only one direction you can go after the first year, after the championship year. And so that was indicative of you're not always going to win the Southern League Championship. You're not always going to draw over 300,000 fans. You're not always going to have a farm club that's going to bring this electricity. And I think the politics, what I think Huntsville, I think the Huntsville fans had a little difficulty dealing with the politics of minor league baseball. I think they wanted to keep the party going. When players, a real feisty leader named Rocky Coyle, when he was demoted to single A in early June, the fans got together and protested and wrote a petition. Thousands of fans signed a petition to keep him in Huntsville. When José Canseco, who they just adored, got promoted to AAA in July, it devastated them because they wanted to keep this party going. But again, the parent club controls the player movement and the personnel movement. So that was just, I think, an adjustment that Huntsville had to make, is losing these players, because it was a minor league club, but to Huntsville, Alabama, it was their major league club. So and I like Ray Thomas' quote when he said, I think this is great. He said that it was like this was a city craving their long lost son, but they got a whole team of them, and I think that perfectly just kind of demonstrated and fits into where how the Stars just they went in there and electrified the city, and the city embraced them.
Yeah, I think that's always the toughest thing for fans of any minor league team in any sort of professional league, is that the success of the team always takes a back seat to the success of the individuals and how well that they are coming along, or the seasoning that they need, because it's really you're literally farming, and you're growing crops, if you will, if you want to strain the analogy, into things that are going to be needed for the big table right up in the show. And, if Canseco's having a great year and banging out a whole bunch of homers and helping the Stars, lead the league, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Yeah, and no matter how much of a minor league club means to the city, or how much excitement this club is bringing, and stars that are mushrooming there, it's the parent club's decision making and overall vision of the organization that trumps it all.
Yeah, it's great. I noticed, I'm looking at some of the other names. I don't think like Luis Polonia was part of this team. You had obviously José Canseco. A lot of these players, not all, but a lot of these players, went on to pretty substantial careers, if not sort of standout, major league all-stars, certainly, pretty darn good, multi-year, multi-season success. I just wonder if, I guess since you focus on 85, we really don't get a chance to kind of officially sort of get into the sort of the denouement of this story, right? I mean, they went on to win 2 other league titles besides that first inaugural season in 85, both 1994 and 2001. But it's interesting that, in doing my initial research for this show is that they only lasted not even 30 years in Huntsville. I mean, they left in 2014 for a bunch of reasons. I'm really curious, especially given the preponderance of some big names that certain fans of a certain age might remember as major league players. Canseco certainly being prime among them. Where did this history go? I mean, this book is terrific in that it's highlighting the debut season and the freneticism that went into launching it, literally and figuratively. But it's gone now. What's left in its wake? I know what's happening to the stadium, and it's kind of ironic. You probably do too now. But where does this story live, so to speak? Where could that quote unquote pennant sort of be logically housed, either psychically or literally, in the real world? And where are the memories and the fans and those? What happened sort of in the diaspora, do you think?
Well, I think after just that adrenaline rush of the first year, there's always going to be a letdown, and that was a special year because you had just some just top premier prospects there, and it was a new toy. And sometimes, I remember when I got my first video games when I was younger, I played them till I got tired of them, and then you start being interested in other things. So this focus was just on this particular year and just the revival this club brought. But as you know, the Stars, the franchise moved to Biloxi, Mississippi in 2014. And looks like they're renovating it, as you're hinting at. The Huntsville is renovating Joe Davis Stadium now, and you also have the Rocket City Trash Pandas. They're the AA affiliate of the Angels. They're located in Madison, Alabama, nearby, and they're considered like a Huntsville team there. So you have that, but I think this was just a season where it was their first year, and there's context before the season from Larry Schmidt's time in Nashville to Walt Jocketty's farm club in Albany, New York, and these minor leaguers, their climb in the A's organization. So it's just I think the adrenaline rush of that first season. I mean, you win a championship the first season. You draw over 300,000 fans your first year of existence. That's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We always tend to sort of get into, where does that story, where do those championships, where do those memories, shall we say, where do fans go to, to legitimately, I guess, focus those memories and those. It's not like somebody dying, right? And there's, people either get buried or they're put in a mausoleum or something. But there's also a tangible, almost kind of place where you could argue that, the memories should be, remembered and revered to kind of go back and sort of honor those situations. In this case, 3 championships, 1985 being the first one, right? So, does this team in Madison, is that the logical place where, if there is a reunion of the 1985 club, let's say in 2 years, that would be the logical place? It's probably not Biloxi anymore, because Biloxi, the natural continuation of the team in Biloxi ended as well in 2014. I guess the question is, or is it Oakland A's, given all the players that sort of came through that farm system and stuff? Or is this just a stupid question and maybe the pennants are in somebody's basement and that's all it's ever going to be?
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of what you mentioned. I think the Rocket City Pandas have some Huntsville history since they were the new club coming there. And I know, knowing some people in the organization, they have hosted some Huntsville Stars nights They're hosting a Huntsville Stars night in September this upcoming season. I know the Huntsville Downtown Library, when I visited there in Huntsville, they have a lot of Huntsville Stars memorabilia stuff and books on the Huntsville Stars, and a lot of the film of the Huntsville Times and the Huntsville News with articles. I know the Huntsville Library recently put out a video on the Huntsville Stars. So I think, and as you mentioned, I'm sure there's some memorabilia and some pennants in the Huntsville Downtown City Hall and the library. And you're right, in the basements of fans and employees that were living in Huntsville during that time.
Yeah, and my mistake, but the Biloxi Shuckers live on today. They've survived the absorption and the reconstitution by Major League Baseball. But obviously, it's a newly named franchise, right? I doubt very seriously. I think especially in the minor leagues, but I could see in the majors it's a little different. I'm pretty certain that virtually nobody in the Shuckers organization or in the stands or in the media there have any sort of warm fuzzies for this team in Huntsville that used to exist prior to the Biloxi's Shuckers franchise coming into play.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. And I think a testament to me being able to put this book together is that the Huntsville residents there that are a little older, they still remember this Huntsville Stars team. They remember this what this Huntsville Stars club did to them, and they'll still talk about Parkway Jose and Stan Javier and Tim Belcher and Daryl Ackerfelds. So this still, and that's what inspired me to write the book, is when I started covering José Canseco's passing through AA Huntsville in 1985. What really stuck out was just the freshness this club brought to the city. And there are many residents in Huntsville that hold this team close to heart, and it's a big, huge part of their childhood. So, and that's what I was able to interview a lot of fans, and I interviewed the mayor, Tommy Battle, and he was a young councilman that just came into the city council back then. So a lot of them really remember this team, and that I think that was the muscle that allowed me to finish the book.
So, I mean, it would seem that the Trash Pandas themselves a relocated team from Mobile, and obviously relatively new. I mean, the pandemic, I guess, kind of sort of put them on on a delay. But they're, I guess, if anything, or if any team, any club, any place that could credibly have either a reunion or throwbacks or some kind of remembrances or ceremony, right? I mean, it would seem to be the case that, fans want to somehow remember the good old days, that it would perhaps be in the Trash Pandas' best interest to maybe kind of glom onto that and, how about a throwback jersey or some kind of, retro thing. And just seems like it could be a natural thing, especially given how many people, per your reporting, have memories of that time and that team and those people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they during these Huntsville Stars nights they have and Huntsville reunions, a lot of these former stars, they've returned to Huntsville. They're invited still. So they do have a database of those players, and they reach out to them to come to events. I think Rocky Coyle, he's went to events. Ray Thoma, Rob Nelson. There's been a lot of players from that Huntsville Stars team that return there for events that the Trash Pandas sponsor there. So I think that I think you're right. The Trash Pandas do their best to still honor the Huntsville Stars history there, and they'll bring the Huntsville personnel there. And I know they've invited José Canseco to go there as well, and other players that played on the team, and some who can make it go there. And I think it's just it's a testament to them honoring Huntsville baseball legacy and that special Huntsville Stars club and the legacy they left there.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting too. I mean, if those players indeed went back to Joe Davis Stadium, I think they'd be quite surprised come next year, because it's being renovated, Joe Davis Stadium, into a soccer field for the the sister or minor league team for the new Nashville Major League Soccer team in the Major League Soccer MLS Next division, essentially Division II. So it's kind of ironic, and that Nashville would sort of re-enter the story, I guess, of that facility, given what was in that facility before its renovation, and that's the original baseball team that called it home in '85.
Right, and you have to remember Joe Davis Stadium in 1984-85. It was built as a multi-use stadium, so it wasn't just a baseball-only stadium. So,
I see. Yes, football too. Yeah.
Football too, high school sports. So that was the vision. So, and you're right. I saw what this new Joe Davis Stadium, what it's being renovated in, some blueprints and photos, and it looks pretty hip and flashy with colors and fancy scoreboards, and it looks very impressive. And I think that's the Huntsville city is putting a lot of money into renovating that. So, and also it's just you keep the name Joe W. Davis Stadium. He was a 5-term mayor. He passed away in 1992. But he fought hard to bring that Huntsville Stars team there, and he fought hard to build that stadium to accommodate that club. So I think it's great that it still has the name Joe W. Davis Stadium. And hey, he was a five-term mayor from 1968 to 1988.
Give it time. They'll sell the sponsorship, and that'll just be a footnote. All right, but in the spirit of that cynicism, here's my sort of last question, and I think you can sort of see this one coming around the corner. And I asked this for everybody we talked to lately, especially around anything around related to minor league baseball. Right? We all know what's transpired over the last couple of years, and Major League Baseball's thumbprint all over it now, and sort of maybe bringing it much more in line, both economically as well as mindset wise, into harmony with the big leagues, or big league, shall I even say? I don't even know there's any distinction between the American and National Leagues anymore. Really, there isn't. And you can hear in my voice where this sort of question is going, but having immersed yourself into, I don't know if it's golden age. I don't know if there's ever a golden age of the minor leagues, but in 1985, right, minor league baseball was a different thing than it is, in 2023. And you've had enough experience with, looking at stuff in the majors as well as this story in the minors. What are your thoughts about how minor league baseball is looking now? Its alignment much more severely with that of Major League Baseball and its oversight, and and maybe having lost some of these franchises. Huntsville's not one of them in this case, but there were a whole bunch that were excised 2 years ago, right? So I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are, given the story that you just talked about. And is it just old man yelling at the clouds, as I often sort of accuse myself of, or is it indeed some things lost, I guess, in this new and modern transition?
Yeah, well, I think there's really a revival going on in minor league baseball now. I think as an author, I know my book's coming out April 1st, but man, I think there's about 3 or 4 or maybe 5 books on minor league baseball coming out this spring, and I've never heard of that before. You had I've heard of a new stadium that the minor league club's building for over $100 million. So I'm sensing a lot of excitement surrounding minor league baseball today. So and this is you're seeing it promoted on their social media accounts, and you're still seeing the Nashville Sounds. They're a force. And I mentioned the Rocket City Trash Pandas. So I think there is a lot of interest in minor league baseball. And I think a lot of old minor league baseball heads, that maybe coaches or managers that never made it to that big league level, they're loving it. So I think they're right now, and I followed baseball for many years, I think there's a special charm in minor league baseball now, and they have some great marketing minds in there, and fans are going to the game. So I think we're something special is going on in minor league baseball, and there's just a renewed interest in it.
All right, our thanks to Dale. And for those of you wondering, Delivery Stable Pizza is no longer with us. Alabama.com, which is an amalgamation of newspapers and their website and stuff, did a poll back in 2016, I am told, for the 11 Alabama pizza places they wish could be brought back, that they could bring back. And number 3 on that list, right under Bama Beano's in Tuscaloosa, and Cadillac Cafe in Birmingham is, yes, wait for it, Delivery Stable Pizza in Halen Square in Huntsville. And sadly, it's no longer with us, but we do have the everlasting memory of Rick Davis calling all the action on that final broadcast of the 1985 season, imploring all of us to get Delivery Stable Pizza that evening for 5, 10, maybe even more % off. And just a delight to find that clip and celebrate this great story. And Dale, thank you for sharing it with us. Again, the book is One Season in Rocket City. It's a fun read. How the 1985, he says, Huntsville Stars brought minor league baseball fever to Alabama. It is published by the great folks at the University of Nebraska Press. You can get it wherever books are found. And again, if you'd like to give us some referral love in the process, buy the book through our website, if you would, please, at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Searching up this episode number 303, you will find convenient links to the book there, as well as, of course, all the other episodes that we've ever done. We list them all there, and we have all the books in the media and all that kind of stuff all there for you, nice and centrally located. Of course, you can get this podcast wherever you find podcasts. That's Apple, that's Spotify, that's Stitcher, you name it, it's available. YouTube, we're even on. And wherever you can rate and review, leave a positive comment, please do so. That helps the various algorithms out there surface, hopefully, this show or this episode or all of it to people who might just hopefully enjoy the show as perhaps you have just done. We appreciate that immensely. It's the least you can do to support the show. And thank you for doing so. Would you like to send us email? Please, by all means. We're at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. You can follow us on socials, of course. You can go on Instagram. We're at Good Seats Still Available. You'll find us on Facebook at Good Seats Still Available. And on Twitter, you will find us at Good Seats Still. Our thanks, as always, to the great Jerry Payne. Thank you, sir, for your efforts this week, as always. And thank you, of course, for listening. Lots of great stuff in the hopper coming your way. Please stay tuned. Check your feeds. And as spring arrives and baseball gets into full gear and all the playoff action, hope you're enjoying it all. And we'll look forward to hearing or seeing or whatever you next week. Thank you again for listening. Take care. Bye.